I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of the Top 10 of the 2010s. And this week, we're going to be talking about This Is the End, my favorite comedic movie of the decade. But if you're new to the series, what I do is every 3 weeks, I break down some of my favorite movies of the decade in a particular genre. We've already done now comedies, we've done sci-fi, fantasy, romance. Next week is going to be the top 10 westerns of the decade. And then after that, it's going to be the top 10 horror movies. So I've been having a lot of fun with the series. You guys have been commenting down below some of your favorite in a respective genre. So please continue to do that. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts and what do you think of my picks and what are some other movies you get to say and some of your favorite of the decade. And if you agree with my picks, all that sort of fun stuff. But how the format works is the first week of the genre, I talk about my picks from 10 to 7. The next week, we talk about my picks from 6 to 2. And then finally, one full video on my favorite comedy movie of the decade or romantic movie of the decade. And this week, it is This Is the End.
Emma Watson showed up.
Give me everything you have to drink!
There are 6 of us. You cannot rob us!
I'm not fucking around!
Look at the drinks! Hermione just stole all of our shit.
Is a real perfect movie for me and sometimes feels like a personal movie too. And as I've journeyed sort of across this series, and especially the comedy genre, when I first went into it I was a little bit nervous and scared because when talking about some movies critically and trying to analyze them and explain why I like these movies and why I sort of celebrate them, it's easy to talk about some other movies because they have either larger themes or have, some strong technical elements that you can talk about or certain elements that really resonate to you. But with comedies, I think they're so particular that I often find a difficult time putting exactly why I like a comedy over another. Because at the end of the day, does it make you laugh? I think comedies and horror movies are very similar in that respect as well, because when you like a comedy, it's a guttural reaction. You want to laugh because you can't help but laugh. You just find it funny, and everyone has different styles and different tastes, and you may show someone your favorite comedic movie, and they just don't laugh, they just don't get it. And then, especially with a lot of comedies, when you aren't laughing, you're just sort of being bored because the plot isn't the main focus, or the plot is being used to drive a comedic bit, and if you're not laughing at that comedic bit, it seems a little bit silly and nonsensical. It also depends on if you watch it alone or with friends or in a movie theater. That may have impacted your viewpoint either positively or negatively. If you're in a theater and you're the only one laughing, you may feel more embarrassed to laugh, or if everyone else is laughing, you may join in. There's that factor as well, and then really just there's all different styles of comedies, different performers that relate to somebody. So my list is probably going to be completely different than someone else's. And well, I thought I've done through the rest of the series a way to talk about comedies in an intelligent way, and I really tried to talk about more than just the comedy, some of the other elements that I relate to and respond to. But for This Is the End, it is at the number one spot for the main reason that it makes me laugh the most. Other movies, I really like and they make me laugh and they have maybe some other added benefits that This Is the End doesn't. But for a comedy list, I think you have to go with a movie that just totally resonates with you, something that feels, I said personal at the top of the show because comedies can be very personal because they feel like they hit your style of humor. And everyone sort of has a real passionate fan base with a certain comedy that they love and recommend to others because it almost becomes an extension of yourself. So as to say, this is really my brand of humor. I hope you really like it too, and that's how friendships are built and whatnot. So there is a real personality and a personal kinship that you feel with a movie, and I definitely felt that with This Is the End. But if you don't know, the movie is about actors Seth Rogen, Jay Baruchel, James Franco, Jonah Hill, as actors, as themselves, playing themselves. Seth Rogen and Jay Baruchel go to James Franco's house for a party, which has all the amazing celebrities you could think of, and then the end of the world happens, and they're stuck there, and the film goes on to there, and the first bit of the movie is very much these actors playing over-exaggerated characters of themselves, and we get so many great celebrity cameos in 1-2 scenes in this really awesome house party. And the first sort of hour or so, it sort of plays out like that, even after the apocalypse sort of strikes, and it's all about commenting on the LA-ness of how they're living, and that contrast to Jay Baruchel's character living in Canada and not liking LA, or just the sort of celebrity life and being fake nice, or trying to just become friends with other people's friends, and really just how they'd be totally screwed for the actual apocalypse. But then the second half, I think, actually really morphs into a survival movie, into a post-apocalyptic movie, and really plays true to those genres. Now, we talked about in previous episodes this idea of a comedy, a comedy and a style of comedy that's really been prevalent within this decade, with something like MacGruber, you could fit into that, or Deadpool, or 21 Jump Street, or Lego Batman, for example. It's all using your previous knowledge of other movies or of tropes to comment on that and make fun of that, and use that as sort of a propelling force for a lot of the jokes, so that a lot of people feel like they're in on the joke. And sometimes it can be very smart and snarky, like something like a Deadpool, or another one like 21 Jump Street, I think really uses it to propel the plot. And this is almost a different branch of that, because the actors are literally playing themselves, so they're using their own reputations as a way to make fun of themselves and to make fun of their friends, and so they're using their actual personal lives with inspiration, but almost exaggerated versions of that, and those exaggerated versions are what the public sees in it. So there's a huge sort of self-awareness that's going on within the film, that they're playing what everyone else thinks they're like in real life, maybe not necessarily true to what they actually are. So it's almost using their star personas in such a condensed kind of a way that works really well for the story, because it is just the simple premise of what would these real life actors do if the apocalypse hit. And I think that the premise, of course, is enough and enough to get me into it, but I think it's more than that. Just the fact that we're seeing these really five group of guys on screen together, six really, I mean, there's so many great people within the movie, but we'll call it the main 5/6, with James Franco, Seth Rogen, Jonah Hill, Jay Baruchel, Craig Robinson, and then Danny McBride, they're all sort of some of the most decade-defining or comedic-defining actors of the 21st century. I mean, these guys have represented so many great comedies, especially a certain style of comedy, a comedy which I liked, the sort of raunchy, inappropriate, not PC, joke about anything, kind of a style, totally vulgar kind of a way. And I think this movie is a culmination of all that kind of stuff, because not only is it very self-reflexive, and it's the actors themselves, and they're playing off their previous reputations of how the movie public sort of sees them, but also they're dialing it to totally 11. I think this is maybe the most extreme in terms of the vulgarity and the explicitness of any of their movies that they've ever done before. Some of the Judd Apatow stuff early on in the 2000s has a little bit maybe more heart. This movie just is going purely based on jokes per minute, and making you laugh. And I think there is some sort of interesting dynamics of friendship. But ultimately, it's a movie that is here for the jokes, and here to show these weak kind of actors that wouldn't have any clue what to do in a post-apocalyptic scenario going together. It just so happens that they're all famous, and they all sort of have their own types of egos, and all sort of ideas of what's their importance, I guess, to the world, that they often comment on. But like I said, that second half really goes into that survival kind of a genre. They have the video logs, they have the sort of horror elements and CGI effects that come on later into the film. They also provide some funny scenes. And then just the disillusionment of the friendships, and who would sort of go crazy first, and who would be lying to the others and hide stuff from them, or revealing their true selves in the video logs, and just getting on each other's nerves. That would happen in any other sort of survival movie. That also happens here. And as the movie goes on, it just gets crazier and crazier, and it's more commitment to the presence and absurdity of the moment, and the jokes that they can make from that, and the real dark jokes that they can make from that. There's no holding back. And I really enjoy that sort of humor, that everything is on the board and they can joke about everything, and they do. And really, I think this is a movie I'd recommend to a lot of people, and I've had great success with. People really like this movie. Just as a straight comedy, so it's one of the easiest recommended movies from this whole series that I'd give to somebody. And even if you didn't like the movie, I still think you'd appreciate some of the plot mechanics in terms of what the actual setup is. And I think it's a great premise, so you'll get some entertainment out of that. I think you'll also get some entertainment out of the fact that there's such a great wide comedic ensemble that you probably, unless you don't like comedies at all, you probably like one of these guys' style of humor and how they joke, just because of the variety of the different types. that they do. So for me, it's the US dream team of comedic actors in a great premise that totally delivers and goes to extremes to number 11. It's one of my most rewatchable movies of the decades. It's one of my most rewatched movies of the decades, and I highly recommend. So that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know what some of your favorite comedies of the decade are, and if you like This Is the End, or maybe if you saw something similar to This Is the End that I may also like. Of course, I watch a bunch of movies in preparation for these videos, but I'd love to hear what more potential comedies that you really liked are, and we can have a discussion in the comments. That's always great to have. That's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.